dead, our capital besieged, our security threatened, and our democracy hanging in the balance. And the truth is, a vote to impeach is our resounding declaration that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
The gentleman from New York wishes to reserve.
There is Representative
The
Catherine Clark of Massachusetts.
1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Ison.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The last speaker said that for 4 years the president did all these terrible, insightful things, including anti-Semitism. I take exception with that, but I think it's important that we embrace one thing that was said. Yes, the president has been consistent for the last 4 years. During his campaign,
You're listening to the House of Representatives at the U.S. Capitol, debating the impeachment of President Trump. This is live special coverage from NPR News.
Good afternoon, I'm Avi Wolfmeyer. You're listening to that live coverage of the congressional impeachment hearings on WHYY. We're taking a brief 1-minute break from that live coverage. I want to catch you up on some local news. Pennsylvania Congressman Republican Brian Fitzpatrick and some of his colleagues have introduced a resolution to censure the president for attempting to unlawfully overturn the 2020 presidential election. The censure is essentially a formal statement of disapproval. Donald Trump would be the 4th president to be censured. In Harrisburg, Pennsylvania Senate Republicans will swear in Democrat Jim Brewster today to represent a Pittsburgh area district. The announcement comes after Republican challenger Nicole Ziccarelli lost a federal suit challenging the outcome of the race, which Brewster won by 69 votes. And the city of Philadelphia is easing COVID dining restrictions this weekend. Restaurants will be able to seat up to 25% capacity starting Saturday. Colleges can also resume in-person instruction with masks. Now back to live coverage from NPR.
Live special coverage from NPR News. You're listening to the House of Representatives at the U.S. Capitol debating the impeachment of President Trump.
And defend the Constitution. President Trump put the domestic terrorists on notice by saying, stand back and stand by. He then summoned them to D.C.
This is Congressman Cedric Richmond from Louisiana. He is a Democrat and he is scheduled to join the incoming Biden administration.
Some of my colleagues, some of which may well be co-conspirators, in their latest attempt to placate and please this unfit president, suggest that we shouldn't punish Trump for his actions in order to unify the country. That is the climax of the truth. Let me suggest to them, stand up, stand up, and defend this Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic, including Donald J. Trump. In the first impeachment, Republicans said we didn't need to impeach him because he learned his lesson. So no need to remove him. But we said if we didn't remove him, he would do it again.
Time has expired.
Who told you so?
The gentleman's time has expired.
Richmond out.
The gentleman is recognized.
2 minutes to the gentleman from Arizona, Ms. Fisher.
The gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In opposition to the resolution. At a time when our country needs unity, it is concerning that my Democratic colleagues have chosen to begin impeachment proceedings against a president with exhausted Congress and electors of their objections, and Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States. President Trump has indicated he will peacefully transfer to President-elect Biden next week. So why pursue impeachment just 1 week before he leaves office? I've heard my colleagues on the other side of the aisle say they have to impeach the president because he is too dangerous to stay in power. You know that it is impossible for the Senate to remove him before his term expires. So what? This move sets a dangerous precedent for our nation. If Congress is going to impeach a president, it must not only be done after intense debate and deliberation, not rushed through in the 11th hour to make a political point. This impeachment attempt is dangerous for our country and has far-reaching implications for our future. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from New York, Mr. Jeffries.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I did not come to Congress to impeach.
We're now hearing from Hakeem Jeffries, who was also a manager of the previous impeachment move against President Trump.
Inspired by his hatred and the big lie that he told cannot be ignored. Donald Trump is a living, breathing, impeachable offense. It is what it is. The violent attack on the U.S. Capitol was an act of insurrection incited by Donald Trump. He is a clear and present danger to the health, safety, and well-being of the American people, and that is why this impeachment is necessary on the House floor for a second time with a bipartisan majority. Violence will not win. Insurrection will not win. Sedition will not win. Terror will not win. Lawlessness will not win. Mob rule will not win. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Democracy
The
will
gentleman's
prevail.
time has expired. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On January 3rd, we stood here on this floor and swore an oath to defend our Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. 3 days later, that oath was put to the test.
Representative
when a
Pete
violent
Aguilar,
mob tried to
Democrat of
break down
California's
those
31st
doors
district.
to stop us from performing our constitutional duty. This mob was not without a leader. On that day, the president told them to walk to this Capitol 16 blocks from where he stood. They were radicalized by his lies and conspiracy theories he spent months fueling, many of which I've heard on this floor the last week. He needed to say only 2 words to end the violence: I concede. Because that's what leaders do in a democracy, because that's what we do in the United States. They put politics aside and put country first. And as I look to our colleagues over on the other side, I wonder how many of them will demonstrate that leadership and join us in holding President Trump accountable for inciting this deadly attack. How many will uphold our oath and put our country first to defend this Constitution from the threat in the White House? To do anything less is to turn your back on the oath altogether. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we continue to reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio continues to reserve. The gentleman from New York is
Madam
recognized.
Speaker, I now yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Cicilline.
The gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Cicilline, is recognized for 3 minutes.
We're now hearing from
Madam Speaker,
Democrat David Cicilline from Rhode Island.
George Washington yielded the presidency to John Adams. The peaceful transfer of power has been a hallmark of our democracy. In this country, the will of the American people reigns supreme over the ambitions of any individual. Every single president has honored and upheld these principles until now. Donald Trump lost his bid for re-election last November. It was a free and fair election. In fact, President Trump's own election security director called it the most secure election in U.S. history. But for 2 months now, Donald Trump has refused to accept the will of the American people. Over and over again, he's told his supporters he didn't really lose. The election was stolen from him and from them. And as they grew angrier and angrier over this perceived injustice, he told them there was still a way to keep him in power. So as Congress prepared to meet for the sacred ritual of certifying the results of the presidential election, the president made his move. He directed his supporters to travel to Washington for a rally to stop the steal. They did. He then, once assembled, he had one final request: march on the U.S. Capitol, do what it takes to help me hold on to power. We will never give up. We will never concede, he told them. You don't fight like hell, he warned, you're not going to have a country anymore. The people on the ellipse that day heard his message loud and clear. They answered his call for insurrection. As the third-ranking Republican in this chamber put it, he summoned the mob, assembled the mob, and lit the flame of this attack. Armed with guns, pipe bombs, bats, shields, zip ties, and more, they set their sights on the U.S. Capitol. They stormed the citadel of our democracy. Hundreds of domestic terrorists did what Donald Trump wanted them to do. They seized the Capitol and tried to end our country's 234-year experiment in democracy, as the Trump family and White House aides watched gleefully on television. They searched the halls of this building for the vice president, who they came to hang for treason. They overran the office of the speaker, who they came to assassinate. They sought above all else to seize control of our government in the name of Donald Trump. Let that sink in. The terrorists who stormed this building planned to hang the vice president, kill the speaker, and topple our government. They took down the American flag and replaced it with a Trump flag. I asked my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, who are not planning to vote for this article, is this the kind of country you want to live in? What are you going to tell your children and grandchildren when they ask what you did in this moment? Did you stand for the Republic or for this president? Heed the words of Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president who told our country that a house divided against itself cannot stand.